Hello! Welcome back to another episode of Are You Experienced, the podcast all about the business of experiences. This week I'm joined by the wonderful and multi-talented Vance Garrett. Vance describes himself as a creative producer, but as you'll see, that rather underdoes the breadth of expertise and the depth of thinking that he brings to the industry. We cover everything from the science of shared experiences to the distribution problem in immersive entertainment, which is becoming a recurring theme of this series. And it's easily one of my favourite conversations so far. So I hope you enjoy. On with the show. Vance, hello. Welcome to Are You Experienced?
Hello, Joe. Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely being here.
Yeah, great. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Same.
So I always like to start at the very beginning. I'm fascinated by origin stories and how people ended up in the wonderful world of live experiences. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. Tell us about where you started out, how you kind of ended up where you are, and or the sort of twists and turns on the way, I suppose.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to wind way up and go way back. So I was a kid who just had always been creating experiences my whole life, creating carnivals in the backyard, haunted houses in the basement, creating parades around the neighborhood, or murder mystery dinner parties when I learned how to cook. And it was just instinctual, and there wasn't a path. There wasn't a professional path that I saw to do that sort of work. It was I liked recreating Six Flags Great America rides in my backyard, but what course of study is that? And so I found theater, and I was a theater kid. It was either sports or theater, and my brother had sports, so I did theater and dance and acrobatics. And that was my lane from childhood through high school into college, and beyond. And I was poised for that to be my whole career. I thought that I would be a Broadway performer. I thought that I would be an acrobat in cirque, and I was able to do things that I'm really proud of, and I had fun with it. But it always felt limiting in some degree as being a creative being, as being an artist. I I liked creating the whole experience, and I had a taste of that, and I had a practice of that as a child, and just being up on stage with everyone looking at you. I mean, it's fun being in a really theatrical environment. It's fun being in that world, and it's fun to play in that regard. I had less fun auditioning, and I had less fun literally having people watch me play. I just I don't think I ever got out of that awareness that people are paying attention to me. So rather, part of the fun of play is you're inside looking out, and you're not self-conscious, and you're moving. And I just did not love being on stage in that way. And so when I moved to New York, September 7th, 2001, and had one weekend of fun exploring nightlife there before everything turned with 9/11. And clearly for the whole world, it was a time to take inventory. And I stayed in New York, but the idea of auditioning for Broadway shows when I didn't really want to be in them at the end of the day, I want to say I was in them. I didn't actually really want to be in them. I was like, this is what do I do? So I found nightlife as a bartender, still auditioning, still curious about that world, but the bloom had come off the rose. And through nightlife, I was able to find a whole other path. And while I was bartending, I looked out at either the bar that I was in or the club. I'm like, this is theater. This is just theater where everyone's on the same plane and everyone is in on the same world. And there's not this division. There's not this fourth wall that you have to break through. There is no fourth wall. Everyone's experiencing a heightened reality together. And through that, I was tapped to write audience experience treatments for large 6,000 person parties that wanted a true emotional arc to the experience and a true specific setting and conflict, and to harness what was happening in pop culture at the time, or the fashions of the moment, and the sensibility. And that was really my way into immersive experiences, that confluence or that convergence of the theater know-how and um, nightlife, collective joy or collective effervescence, which I hope we'll get to speak more about later, and 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 aligning that with what's happening in the zeitgeist right now, bringing people together. That's what set me up to start to work on Sleep No More. So I was the entertainment director on Fire Island, which, if anyone knows Fire Island, or if you don't know, I'll tell you. It's a legendary gay community about 2 hours roughly outside of Manhattan. It's a beach community, and had been an artist colony or artist haven, but it's the gay Hamptons, so to speak. And I was the entertainment director, booking all the DJs and creating the parties for it, um, and 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 I never lost my love for theater. It was just, how do I want to relate to theater? And when I knew, and still being a good student, I was paying attention to what was happening in London, and I saw the I saw evidence of the work that Punch Drunk was doing, and Shunt, and and others, all the work that was coming out of the old Vic tunnels at the time. And when I knew that Punch Drunk was preparing to come to the United States, um, I pursued that opportunity. I was friendly with one of the exec producers, and I went to go see a version of it that they had just outside of Boston, with the American Repertory Theater, and I said, I want to be a part of this. And he said, well, you can be the guy who's responsible for getting volunteers for the project. We need a bunch of volunteers to paint the set and and then do. So it sounds like Tom Sawyer. Like like they wanted to convince people to like paint the set, and that was a need. He said, or you can be the guy who has to know everything about everything. And I thought about it for all of a night. I knew instantly, but I was like, okay, I want that role, which is not really a job title, like, or a job
Yeah.
description. It's like, what does that mean? But the executive producers brought me in to be the supervising producer, so founding team member of it, who had to really track and channel everything that was happening, and I got to work closely with Punch Drunk to adapt this piece to have it make sense in New York City, and so. I could talk about Sleep No More forever. I assume a lot of your listeners are familiar with it. But that once we got that up and running and it was a hit, I went to go launch a series of other projects, and um, um, I was the founding producer and project manager for 29 Rooms for Refinery 29. So that was the first of the Instagrammable playgrounds, we called it. Um, that's just when Instagram was starting to um, take its hold on culture. And after I launched that, then I went on to go launch the original Museum of Ice Cream, which I am still shocked by how well it performed. It's a bit of a Frankenstein's monster thing, where I'm like I thought we were just doing a little silly summer project, and I was proud to see how well it performed, but it was also just odd because it was so different from the
Mm.
nightlife traditions that I had come from, where you don't have phones on the dance floor, you don't take pictures of what's happening, and as interesting as it was to see how popular it was, I'm like, this is not the end all be all. Like, let's keep exploring and let's see what other sort of work we can do. And throughout all of this, been producing a lot of brand events, being creative director for a lot of brand events, or um, any sort of event, annual Halloween parties. I never lost that love for quick and dirty projects, not just these long like wind up for projects. But I, I for all of that, I kept exploring New York City, like urban exploring, trying to find spaces that other people hadn't tapped to create projects that would elicit wonder. It's hard when you go into a theater or you go into a space that you're familiar with, um, to pique that sense of curiosity, and it's easier if you find an old abandoned post office that you don't know what the insides of it are about. And so part of my just professional practice was trying to find my way into buildings that others may have overlooked. And it's a fun way to view a city. It's fun to just walk down the street. Like, I wonder what's happening in there. I wonder if I can get in. And one of the buildings I was curious about was the Oculus downtown New York. So it's the Calatrava. It's a masterpiece. It's a beautiful, beautiful building um, down in Lower Manhattan. And sure enough, a Broadway producer who had come to my boxing club, I had a boxing club in terms of experiences, just trying new things. I had that as well. And I learned that Westfield, the mall company, had bought this gentleman. His name's Scott Sanders, incredibly well-regarded Broadway producer. Ran Radio City Music Hall for a long time. Produced The Color Purple with Oprah, and many other projects. Uh, Westfield bought his Broadway production company, and I hit him up and I said, "Hey, if you have this access to this building, I know how to make content for it." What he didn't know is that I had a spreadsheet of, hundreds of ideas for projects that I've wanted to see happen, experiential, immersive projects, original ideas. And I thought, well, just maybe there's a way to do some of them in the Oculus. And as we had a conversation, I sent him my capabilities deck, and it felt very in alignment with what he was interested in for the Westfield properties. And Westfield created a job for me and moved me out of New York City and moved me to LA. And I did not want to leave New York. I did not want to come to LA. Uh, that was 9 years ago. I'm still in LA, but they moved me out there to lead up experiential entertainment for their global portfolio. And I mean, talk about a shift in a career, going from doing these one-off projects in found, aka derelict spaces in New York City, to being able to look at this whole other um, distribution platform and this just different instrument to play with and figure out what is the opportunity here and uh, is this heralding the golden age of experiential entertainment and immersive entertainment, knowing that these big developers want to get
Mm,
in on this space. And uh, I'm sure there's more to discuss with Westfield, but just to try to
mm,
round out my own my background piece of it to bring you into
mm,
where we are now. I was at Westfield for about 2 years before it was acquired by another company, and it was clear to me it was going to take the new ownership a while to get around to having the conversation around experiential.
mm,
Experiential was what could be coming up in the future, and they needed to take care of immediate things. So I went to go do other projects. I went to go work with Tyra Banks for a while before COVID hit. When COVID hit, I um, knew that what we were gearing up for was not going to happen. I went to go work with the CAA team, so the Creative Artists
mhm,
Agency team, to launch a studio called Constellation Immersive. I was its chief creative officer. So over COVID, when no one could get together, and none of the venues were available, the charge was, okay, how do we create something that's experiential? And we created a drive-through Elf on the Shelf experience for the holidays, and did get to launch a project that I'd been wanting to do forever, an idea that I had on a post-it note called Disco Oasis. I wanted to create a disco in the middle of natural space, in this case, a botanic garden. And some of that was informed by my time on Fire Island, where I could see how fun it was when people are in a natural
mm,
setting and disco is just permeating the environment. And we launched this project with Nile Rodgers, the famous music producer, at South Coast Botanic Garden here in Southern California, and it was the right idea at the right time, that found an audience who just fell in love with this convergence of music and spectacle, and it was just a very joyful experience. Yada yada yada. Now I am back being an independent creative producer and creative director, developing original IP, and um, just signed a lease for a project called Magical Candy Cottage to launch in New York City next year with my co-producer, my co-founder, a woman named Ariel Tepper. I say AT because I can't pronounce Ariel the way she wants me to, so I just refer to her as AT in case she's listening. But that brings us up to now. Those are some of the greatest hits. I'm happy to double click on any of them for what you might find interesting for your listeners. But
Absolutely.
that's how I got to where I am in experiential entertainment.
Well, like you say, yeah. I mean, you said that there's no obvious pathway available to you to start out, but it sounds like you
Right.
haven't really taken an obvious pathway once you
No,
got
not at
started.
all. It's not obvious at all. And
Yeah.
my poor family, every time they have to explain to others what I do, I have not given them the tools
Yeah.
to do that. You know, at best, Vance is following his intuition and his curiosity. And yet that's not that's true, but it's you know, I do um enjoy uh anticipating or seeing where culture's going and being able to identify what's happening on the fringe of society and knowing, oh, that is going to bubble up to be
Yeah.
mainstream, or that is going to permeate culture, that is going to be the new thing. And I think I developed that appreciation from nightlife. It's,
I was
you
going to
know,
say, yeah, you sort of,
what's that's part of the game. It's like, okay, this DJ is doing this, or this
yeah,
demographic, this audience has found this. Let's watch and see how that audience starts growing. And I still do that. I still apply that practice. And um, it's not willy-nilly what I'm doing. I'm paying really close attention to how the conversation's shifting around the live experience and how people are communing and getting together. And
yeah.
what's holding everyone together. And it gets disrupted every 6 months, whether it's through, you know, technology, clearly with phones and how we relate to our phones or our handheld devices, to how real estate is changing and who holds the keys to what third spaces. You know, every time
Mm.
that shifts, we've got to adapt to it. So yeah,
Well,
yeah,
let double click on that then, because I find that sort of detour that you did into Westfield,
yeah,
I find fascinating because that was, in the world of immersive 9, 10 years ago, whatever it was that you did that is a long time ago,
yeah,
right? So
it
that
was,
was
yeah,
very early in this kind of trend that we're seeing more and more of immersive experiences taking up space in retail locations. I mean, the obvious one, which is in a Westfield, is that Phantom Peak in the UK has just gone into or is about to launch in a Westfield site. So what did you what did you learn from that? Obviously you were early, and it sounds like you were early to the point where Westfield weren't
too
really
early,
ready to kind of
right,
make that bet fully. So
right,
tell us a bit more about that.
sure. For what it's worth, just since we're talking about timing, Westfield has come back to me of late. they
Right.
and they are now a client again,
Okay.
and I advise them and produce, namely their holiday experience and here in Century City, which I think is their crown jewel of their portfolio still.
Uh-huh.
But coming up with a business plan for it and executing it and the creative, like the whole thing. And so I just want to acknowledge that because uh, I'm still in relation to them and still get to
Mm.
work with them, and it still feels like some of the things that we learned together were still evolving, and so we're still trying to integrate into what's possible. Look, one of the exciting things about malls or a portfolio of mall properties is you have a distribution platform. And one of the
Mm.
trickiest things or theoretically you have it. And one of the trickiest things for experiential entertainment is this site specific or site responsive? Is it a one off, or can it be afforded the luxuries that other media has, like film, TV? You know, you can get so
Mm.
many eyeballs on that, whether it's through screens, depending on the, you know, small screens or big screens. Um, but it's really hard to do with, let's say, a Sleep No More or a project that can only, satisfy maybe 100 people per night. And I love immersive experiences, and I love that live thing. But even Broadway is a really tricky, if not terrible, business model. It's
Yeah.
maybe Broadway plus a touring model for a show. Maybe that's when the numbers start
Yeah.
making sense. But just to have something that's committed to one location or bound by one location is very challenging. And part of the excitement of working with the Westfield is, could we create a touring model from the media markets from New York, or integrating the media markets, launching with the media markets, New York, LA, and have a property play to uh, San Francisco, Dallas, Miami, you name it. And that was part of the hope and the dream, and I would argue still is. There's still the opportunity with these real estate investment trusts or these developers that have multiple locations. The challenge, and it's maybe not specific to Westfield, is, you know, if that's a new idea,
Mm.
how do we know, how do we how do we allocate the right amount of space for it, or the proper space for it, for that opportunity to hold? And I guess what I'm saying is, malls still work on a leasing model. It's really
Mm.
about leasing your space to
Yeah.
a retailer who can have it for 5, 10 or so years. And sure, there are variations to that. There's specialty leasing, which can happen at a quicker cadence, or there might be dedicated marketing space for pop-ups. Um, but it really requires an integrated approach, where if you want, let's say, a 9,000, 10,000 square foot space, roughly the same size that we used when we launched Museum of Ice Cream. It
Mm.
was about a 9,000 square foot space. Whose inventory are we taking? Is it the leasing guy's inventory that we're taking, or is it going to be a dedicated space for experiential entertainment? And
Mm.
the developer needs to um, see the opportunity in that. And again, we were just too early 9, 10 years ago. There weren't the case studies. There weren't the
Yeah.
proof. There was there were the projects that were part of my body of work: Sleep No More, Museum of Ice Cream, 29 Rooms, as case studies. But there wasn't quite this idea yet of, like, okay, well, is there really an audience for that? And will the audience return? Can these be long running projects, or was it just a flash in the pan? I think now we know I know we know there's a whole uh, industry around experiential entertainment, and an audience, and it would serve real estate investment trust developers well to reconsider that notion about how multiple properties can um, support this effort and capitalize on the whole economy that's there. Yeah.
What do you think the answer is then? In that question of a sort of developer owned, not necessarily operated, but a dedicated space for within which you could then, I suppose, have shorter term leases and things like that, or if it
Yeah.
is just using retail units on a kind of a lease model. What's the right answer, do you think?
Yeah. I look, as a creator, as a producer of these, my dream would be that there is a dedicated distribution platform
Yeah.
for, you know, let's say 6 or 7 markets, that's at least 10,000 square feet, if not more than that,
Yeah.
where there can be a pipeline of
Yeah.
touring projects. Like, and I know the numbers can work if it's
Mm.
curated the right way, if
Yeah.
it's programmed the right way. And that's not to be glossed over. I mean, that's then the art, is finding the properties. And there's still not the development pipeline. There's not one go-to source or sources in the way that there had been with the movie industry, where there's the studios, and where I think the experiential economy is still working through its development pipeline. And
Yeah.
is it going to be a bunch of independent producers, or is there going to be um, a studio or series of studios, we're working through that.
Yeah.
And but if it can be curated the right way, if you have the right buyer
Yeah.
who knows um, what properties can attract what audience members, and if you can solve that piece of it, and if there are any developers out there who are curious about it, I'm happy to have conversations with whomever. You know,
Mm.
I think you can have something really exciting happen, and you can lead the industry. No one
Yeah.
has claim that spot yet, So
Yeah.
it still excites me. You know, then there's just another way to think about these mixed use properties, which is, well, maybe we want to give the entertainment away, or maybe it doesn't all want to be behind um, a enclosed space. Maybe it wants to be in an open air space. And and sure enough, actually Century City does quite a bit of that with their atrium space. I don't know who would be familiar with it, but they have a big, beautiful open atrium. It's almost like a theater, but you can look in on it, and it's great for, um, sure enough, marketing activations or um, one-offs like their viewings of the World Cup there that now that they're doing, or you name
Mm.
it. It's like a beautiful event space. It's
Mm.
just hard to um, enclose it because you don't want to enclose it. You just want to give it away. You want people who are coming to the mall to just
Yeah.
see what's happening in there. And that's a slightly different game. So then you might be taking the pressure off of tickets needing to support everything. And it's more about getting eyeballs on
Mm.
whatever the activation or project is, uh, which is absolutely in alignment with marketing projects. It's how many impressions can you
Yeah.
make, and then it also can support with driving foot traffic to the mall
Mm.
and increasing dwell time. And those
Mm.
are really, really valuable for, that's what a mall wants. That's what a real estate
Yeah. Yeah.
investment trust wants. That's what the leasing guys want. They want to be able to say, we are attracting as many people as Disneyland is every year.
Mm.
I think that's true for Century City. Someone else can send me an email if I'm off, but that's
Yeah.
really powerful. And you can do that the if the property has really interesting content going on any given
Exactly.
day.
Yeah.
People want to go see and explore, and they don't just want to transact. They don't just, I mean, sure, you want to go, you are going to buy clothes, you're going to buy whatever you want to buy, but
Yeah.
if
But
you're
even
just
then,
doing that,
yeah, even then, I
yeah,
was just going to say, like a lot of retail is it's more showroom than transaction now,
correct,
right? So like,
100%, correct.
and so
Yeah,
that idea of going to the mall, it just being a retail space and that being enough to get people to go there and stay there and dwell there is kind of a bygone
yeah,
era almost. And I love this idea of shopping malls being much more sort of um, mixed use entertainment spaces and
same.
venues. And they've already got the
Yeah,
food courts and all this kind of stuff, and just being a good place to spend time, which is what malls used to be, but just driven by
totally.
shopping and food. Um,
Yeah,
so I think you're right to like calling those two separate things out because they are totally separate things. That if you're selling tickets, that's one thing, but if you're using experiential entertainment to drive um the core business, then that's two very different approaches, which I find fascinating. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, it's, the um just adding to what you're saying. Yeah, you're not going to the mall for uh just to transact. You're not going there because it's super frictionless. Maybe with clothes because you kind of want to, like, you need to like touch and
Yeah.
feel. Like
Yeah.
there's that, or who knows, like cosmetics, beauty. I understand all that, but we're going because we're social animals. We need to be around other people. I think this is one of the drivers for malls still, for mixed use properties. But what you were saying about, um, you said it differently, but it's really interesting when you have um, more than just stores though. So I'm
Mm.
most familiar with Century City, but like I think about 33% of the retailers there are actually restaurants. I think it had been around that number for years. Then you also have a grocery store there. You have like one of the best grocery stores on the west side there. So people have to show up just to like get their groceries. Then you also have UCLA has a medical office there, so you might go see your doctor while you're there. And you just it layers up, and you look at it, and you're like, oh, this is town square. This is
Yeah.
especially in a market like LA where it's so hard to find the center of it. You're like, oh, this is as much the center as any
Yeah.
place. So yeah,
But a
yeah,
center that is sort of safe and
yes.
like thinking about, you mentioned like third spaces earlier, and for young people, I mean, I'm not going to say that I spent a lot of time in malls as a youngster because I'm from the UK, but but
I
I've
spent a
seen
lot of
plenty of.
times in
I
malls.
was
I
going
spent a
to say,
lot of
yeah,
time being from Chicagoland, a Midwesterner growing up in the 80s and 90s. Like
yeah,
malls were the hang, you know? You
exactly,
would your parents felt okay knowing that you were going to be there with friends, and it was a super social experience, and you weren't
yeah,
on the streets. You were just like going
yeah.
to Spencer Gifts or Abercrombie or like
Yeah, yeah,
hanging
or
out at a food
just
court.
hanging out. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's kind of and in terms of a usage occasion, if you like, for shopping malls, that feels like a real opportunity again, because there's very few safe third spaces for young people these days.
I agree. I agree. I do not have children, but I still can empathize with, wow, where would I send my kids now? Or where would I be okay with young people if I had a young child or a young person to whom to be accountable? Like I don't it's tricky and uh especially in the United States with
Yeah.
how violent and scary the world here can be at times, you know. But malls are amazing. Like I go to Century City here and like it's an oasis.
Mm.
It's beautifully done and there's something romantic about it. It's a California dream. I will I'll go to the Grove here. I don't know if everyone knows the Grove, but it's arguably the competing property uh, from a different developer, and it does feel like a mini Disneyland. There's a trolley going down the middle of it, or maybe Lady Gaga is popping out of an Apple store doing a promotion, literally, and it feels safe. Whether it is safe or not, I don't want to make that claim, but it
Yeah,
does
yeah,
it feels safe. I haven't seen anything um, dangerous happen in either one of those locations.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Good. Before we move on from the Westfield piece,
Yeah.
being that early and dealing with kind of big corporations, how do you sell creative ideas into kind of a commercial real estate business?
Sure. Different ways for different projects. And so it's easiest on the sell side, it's easiest if there is a case study or a beta version, a minimum of a project that has the metrics that anyone would want to see, knowing that it makes money, knowing that it has an audience, knowing that there's a mechanism or means to re-engage that audience.
Mm,
The more revenue streams that are associated with the property, the better. You know, if you can point to those, like that's an easy
mm,
that's an easy conversation.
mm,
And if there's brand recognition, it's an easier conversation. And I think it's one of the reasons why you will see pre-existing or licensed IP
mm,
um, in an experiential format in malls
mm,
because everyone knows Star Wars or they know
mm.
Bluey or they know, you know, it feels it's an easier conversation to have. You said
Mm.
Phantom Peak. Phantom Peak was at one location, and now it proved that it's a hit, and now it's
Yeah.
moving into a Westfield in London. That's easy. What's a little trickier is if you want to launch original IP or a new
Mm.
brand in a mall. And and ironically, at least for me, that's what I do. Like that's exactly that's what I d- that's what I do. Uh, it's hard to say, hey, I see this trend happening in culture where everyone is getting excited about millennial pink, and ice cream is it's just hard. It's just harder
Yeah.
to do it. I'm at the point in my career where now there is a body of work, and I can say, hey, this was a hit, this was a hit, this was a hit, this was a hit. So unique to me or anyone who's been able who's had the privilege of doing it for a couple decades, the tone of the conversation might shift a bit.
Yeah.
And we might be afforded that opportunity to point people in the leasing team or the CEO saying, hey, there is still not a go-to source for it. But from
Mm.
from my track record, or here from my point of view, for these reasons, I think that we should think about this property, this property, this property. Those are
Mm.
still really hard conversations to have, or
Mm.
had. I don't think they're ever easy to have. Um,
But again, potentially
but
solved, right?
but
I Oh, sorry, go on.
no,
I
no,
was
no,
just
you go for it. Yeah.
I was going to say that again is another reason to have this sort of, like, you see places like Area 15
Yep.
in Vegas, and
Vegas. Yep.
Immerse London in London, um, where that's sort of, you can create this sort of brand around the space almost, and
Yeah.
then the stuff that goes into it can be a little bit more experimental and new potentially, because
Totally.
the
Absolutely.
risk is lower if it doesn't work. If you see what I mean, you can just kind of get
Yeah.
another.
Yeah. You can. Yeah, I have to imagine they're still. Um, they're largely working on lease models. I'm gonna assume that. I don't know. Or whatnot. But they need to program that space. Someone goes to Meow. I guess the other thing that you can consider. I'm jumping around a bit, but from a programming perspective, is what's truly the dwell time for someone who's going to be at your location. If it's a mall, maybe it's one thing. If it's a entertainment center, maybe there's a couple more hours there. But if you look at, I know, let's say, making up numbers, but if you know that they're going to go to the marquee attraction, let's say it's Meow Wolf, and they're going to spend the better part of 2 hours there, they might have time for one other 45
Mm,
minute long experience. And I would think a programmer or the developer could be like, how many 45-minute long experiences do we have that's going to complement that
mm,
that 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 can happen after lunch or can happen before they need to go off to back to their casino to go see another show. Um, yeah, I guess I'm just pulling back the curtain a bit about
yeah,
how a
yeah, yeah,
programmer should think about the space or think about the larger audience experience, knowing how it's in relation to other things that are happening, and that if you're going to be in proximity with other businesses or attractions, like how do you all play together? How do you all, how do you create an ecosystem that benefits everyone? But again, that needs to come from the top down. That sort of thinking. That's really hard from the individual experience producer
yeah.
to make that sell. But it's it's important for us independents to see, okay, they have a Meow Wolf, but they don't have this other thing that's going to extend the stay. So that's going to be the angle. That's going to be the way that I pitch
Mm,
the opportunity. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's fascinating. I think it's like you say. It's that piece in the middle. I think there's uh, this distribution network that is desperate for driving the things that you said, right? Dwell time, footfall, all of that other stuff, for which experiential is a real obvious um, opportunity to do that. But all of the infrastructure in between, everything from business models, rights,
Yeah,
uh, curation and kind of programming, all of that stuff is the bit that's still being figured out, I think. But when
it's
that
still
clicks,
being
I feel
figured
like
out.
it just go. Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Look, I think that's what makes the industry so exciting still. It hasn't fully clicked and it can be really scary. And I actually think we took a dip, especially right before and coming out of the COVID years, where there were a lot of like failures or a lot of experiential failures and people um, lost money. And I think it damaged the trust of some audiences. They would go see things and they weren't great. I,
yeah,
I'm not the one to have coined at this, but others have said it's like our awkward teenage years.
yeah,
Maybe it is, and maybe now the industry is becoming an adult, and it will click. And there's so much knowledge now that we have. There's so much knowledge that we have around these earlier, phase 1.0 of experiential and immersive work. That now
yeah,
we can really lean on that and point to those case studies and improve upon it.
yeah,
And improve upon them. So I'm excited. I'm excited about it. But it's going to take the whole community. It's going to take the developers. It's going to take the technologists and the futurists uh, and the creatives and the trend forecasters who are reading what's happening in culture. It
yeah.
takes the whole village to make this work.
Yeah, and I think that segues nicely to what's so clear in your work and the way that you talk about your work and the stuff that you did at London Experience Week and all that kind of stuff. Um, you've touched on it there, but ultimately, all of the business outcomes that are great for live experiences depend on first achieving human impact. So business impact
Hmm.
follows human impact, right? And that's kind of obviously hugely important to what we do because that's what we measure, and therefore that kind of helps people, create better experiences. And I love this idea that when we spoke before we set this recording up, you mentioned this idea of collective effervescence or collective joy as a concept and something that a design principle, if you like. So
Yeah,
tell us what that is, the science
yeah.
behind it, and then let's dive in.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. It's truly what I am most curious about or most interested in live experiences is how to create the conditions for collective joy. And uh, sociologists had coined the term collective effervescence in the last century, which is the idea of that pleasure that we experience as humans when we are in a collective or in mass, experiencing the same thing at the same time, whether it's a ritual or a parade or a sporting event or being on the dance floor together. There is a certain lightness in being, and and it can feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself, which to me is happiness. Dissolving into something bigger than yourself is happiness. And and it's so tricky in a world that is so fragmented, and when your attention is splintered off in so many different places, and and also when there's a premium culturally, at least say in the United States, and being an individual, it's an individualistic society, like be the best individual you can, get the most attention. I'm totally generalizing, but how do you craft a world where um, people are wanting, willing, able to show up, suspend their day-to-day social selves or ego, and open up, explore a world that allows them to connect with others? And what are the mechanics that make that happen? And I spend a lot of time, spend a lot of time thinking about this and exploring this and playing with it. And I do think this is consistent with what comes out of my nightlife experience, where
Yeah,
um, thank God I learned those traditions from my mentors on Fire Island and my mentors from the Black Party, the Saint at Large, which these are legendary clubs or they're more than clubs, but communities. And there's quite like there's a ritualistic, there's a sense of ritual to the
Mm.
parties and the celebrations. And I learned that there is a phenomenon supporting these collective experiences known as entrainment. And and I've been talking about this a lot this past year, and I've just found it interesting that it hasn't popped in the experiential creator conversation. But entrainment is when oscillating bodies give up their differences in frequencies to match one another. So it's when grandfather clocks, when you put them close enough together after some amount of time, their pendulums, is it pendula or pendulums? Let's say pendulums will be will be swinging at the same direction, or people breathing when they're in the same bed, or when they're just close to one another, or hearts, or menstrual cycles. It just like it happens all across. It happens all across the world, and when you're not in entrainment with others, that's you being by yourself,
Mm.
away from others. It feels like there's an association with um, the plagues of anxiety and depression that has really debilitated so many like swaths of society. But when you're in entrainment, it's actually just easier to live. When you're around other
Mm.
people experiencing the same thing at the same time, it's physically easier for your heart to beat, and
Mm.
it's easier to breathe. And it can happen in mass. It doesn't need to be thousands and thousands of people. As fun as I think that is, and I do think it's fun when you're when you're at Coachella and Beyonce takes the stage and you can just feel everyone's energy
Yeah.
focused on the same thing at the same time. Or when you're on the dance floor and you're waiting for the bass to drop, like it
Mm.
feels awesome. But it can also happen on smaller scales. It can happen with a smaller group of people, literally just breathing at the
Yeah.
same time. I think
Or
that's what the
watching
word
England on
conspiracy
TV
means
in the
is,
pub.
yeah, or that. And it's great.
Listening to you talk there, it's like, I mean, I've
Yeah,
had like exactly the experience that you described. Like the ultimate for me that makes me think of is the pyramid stage at Glastonbury, where you've got like 100,000 people in the field, and you
sure.
can feel that vibe across all of those
Yeah,
people. Unbelievably overpowering, that kind of feeling. I'm kind of getting goosebumps just talking about it now. But
amazing.
but then equally, like, England score a goal in the World Cup, and sitting in I live in a little village in the countryside, and there's maybe
Yeah,
6 or 7 people in the pub, but the goal goes in, and you'd feel it then. It's like people that different
totally,
communities, right?
totally, totally.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
I it is fascinating. And, like I said early on, I chose the theater lane, not the sports lane, but I love how sporting events can bring people together. I still identify as a New Yorker, even though I live in LA. And when the Knicks won the championship a
Wow.
couple weeks ago, I was here in LA, and I felt tingles in my body when they won. And then I saw people like filling the streets of the West Village, and my partner was actually down there and texting me about what he was seeing. And it was I wasn't physically there, but I physically felt it in my body. Because I I had New York in my blood. I know what it feels like to be in the streets of New York City, and you know what it feels like to be in the fields of Glastonbury and or wherever. So yeah, yeah, it's an interesting opportunity
Yeah.
digitally. How the I'm not one to say digital's bad. Like I launched 29 rooms at Refinery or Museum of Ice Cream. Like it's not
Yeah.
bad. I'm not mad at it. It's how to preserve the integrity of the live experience and our rituals around that. Maintain that and layer in these other elements. Awesome. Just yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
the exciting
It's
opportunity.
possible for both to. It's possible basically to kind of harness that entrainment, collective effervescence, whatever, for commercial gain, but you have to be very
It
careful with how you
is.
do it, basically.
It is. You have to be very careful, and you can't get at it by tracking an individual. You have to be able, and even I'm a little hesitant to say this. I feel like is this like giving the magic away? So I hope those who are listening or those who are working on those systems for tracking the data are responsible with this. But one of the things I love about entrainment is you need multiple beings within proximity of one another for that phenomenon to reveal itself. Um, and so, yeah, I get a little curious when I hear people coming up with um, um, tracking the return on investment on
Mm,
experiences, and they're just looking at it from the lens of an individual. I'm like, I
yeah,
think I think you're missing what's really happening there. It's about how
yeah,
the collective is working together. But I
yeah.
digress. Yeah,
Agree. No, well, yeah, it's interesting. We should, off camera, we can
yeah,
talk about how we sort of tackle it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
um, look, I know you. I know we're over time now because I know you have to be somewhere. So I'm gonna
I do.
wrap
Yeah,
up there and say thank you very very
great.
much for joining us. I've really loved it, and hopefully we can continue the conversation
Yes, please.
another
Thank
time.
you. I would love that. Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me speak to what I love and sharing with whomever's listening. I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Vance.
All right. Bye.